was.
It was less than 24 hours ago.
It really was. I was very last minute this week, but we're recording a day early, so I was a little off my game. But our topic is, dear listeners, see-through plants. Now, Steve, why on earth would you want see-through plants?
Oh,
I call on you, Steve.
Okay. Oh, me?
You.
Yeah. The thing about see-through plants, they are plants that, you can actually see through. So they kind of stick up, but they don't completely obscure your vision. Mm-hmm. They are, diaphanous. They're not screens, but you can see what's behind them. And so they create a sense of depth to a garden or to a border or anything, because there's something there, and then they also let you know that there's something behind it. So there's, like I said, there's depth to it. They can add, they give things a sense of scale. It's a wonderful thing because they can provide a hint of what that thing is, and sort of an air of mystery. Like, oh, what is that behind there? Is that a bench? Is that a fountain? And then you have to go and explore it, and that makes it really cool. They also have a great cottage garden effect to them. Like a cottage garden has a lot of see-through plants and like a lot of tall wispy things. So you can see there's a lot going on. Like it's not just tall, medium, short. Like you can vary heights of different things. And a lot of these see-through plants are great because their foliage is down low. Then when they flower, they stick up and say, I'm here, I'm here. And you can notice them, and when they're done, they can go back. So it's they're wonderful additions to pretty much anything, any situation.
I find them to be one of the easiest plants to incorporate after the fact too. A lot of my see-through plants were, I need something between this shrub right here and this kind of bulky perennial. I only have a small space. I don't want anything blocking either one of those plants. Let me throw in a see-through plant because that'll give me some interest, but I'll still be able to see what's behind, and it won't eat what's in front of it either. So, I kind of find them one of those plants that's easy to kind of sneak in between larger plants in larger gardens. The other thing is a lot of see-through plants are self-sowers. They have a tendency to pop up in places that you actually never put them to begin with, but they have this uncanny ability in my garden to just kind of go in the right spots no matter what. And I go, oh yeah, I did that on purpose. Oh, I totally put that plant there.
Yeah. I think we'll talk more about that when we get into our specific plants. But that's one of the great qualities of see-through plants.
Absolutely. They also tend to have more of a wispy texture, right? Many of them. So you get a lot of movement and such.
It can't be very dense if you're going to see through it.
Yeah.
although some of them are. So like probably the first plant I'm going to talk about isn't really dense, but
we'll go right into it. Go right into it. What is
it? They send up spikes. I was going to talk about bronze fennel, which is there's a lot of maybes with this plant. Like I was doing a little research to find out what the zones are and what the plant names are. So bronze fennel is Feniculum vulgare rubrum, or maybe it's purpureum.
I thought it was purpureum, but I'm not sure.
Or it's smoky.
Oh, I've never heard that.
It's vulgare variety vulgare cultivar name. Or
we already decided when they do the variety the same as the species name, that's garbage. That is garbage.
I just find that odd. But it also might be vulgare variety dolce.
Oh, I like that.
With then whatever cultivar name you pick. It might be hardy to zone 5. It might be hardy. Zone 6 to 9 is pretty much the.
That sounds accurate.
6 to 9 is pretty much like the average range. It's like saying someone, like a man was 5'10", 5'11". It's like a normal height, But bronze fennel, for those anyone who do not know what bronze fennel looks like, it has these feathery, ferny leaves to them. They're kind of like a smoky purple, bronzy.
Or bronze, if you will.
Yeah. happening. And it gets to be about 3 to 4 feet tall with the flowers, maybe 1 to 2 feet wide. So you get this wonderful, airy foliage to it that is dense enough to have a mass,
Okay.
because it's that, that feathery foliage. It looks like dill, you know,
Hmm.
and so you get some presence there, but then it sends up, maybe about a foot. So that the foliage is probably about 2 feet, 1 to 2 feet, and then the flowers go maybe like a foot or two above that, and they're umbels, so they're those flat topped, the little things that stick up.
Adored by pollinators. Pollinators just go nutto over those umbel
I,
flowers.
I was getting there. Do you just want to take over from now, or do you just want?
No, I don't like it when you get to talk the whole time and then I say something at the end. It's too predictable. We gotta jump in here. It's like we're
Okay,
hosting a radio show. Okay, go
okay,
ahead, Steve. Tell
okay.
me
So,
about the pollinators.
well, I wasn't there yet. I had other things I wanted to say. But I guess we'll just skip that it flowers in mid to late summer,
Hmm.
uh, very cottage gardeny, like I said.
Hmm.
Um, so pollinators, yes, butterflies, bees, all sorts of little insects. It's the host plant for some swallowtail
Hmm.
uh, butterfly larvae, but the deer don't eat it, so that's great. So it has all these beneficial qualities to it. Pollinators, host plant, beneficial insects, but it's not a native plant.
Hmm.
It's actually native to the Mediterranean, Southern Europe, which is pretty interesting. So it's sort of like the insects have adapted or really like this thing. It does reseed.
Mm.
Talk a little bit about that, Danielle.
Well, I know in certain areas of the country, I don't know if it's actually designated as an invasive plant, but maybe like a kind of obnoxious plant, that it will reseed pretty readily and takes over. However, here in Connecticut, I've never really had that problem. A few babies pop up here and there, easily removed, no biggie. But yeah, it does reseed,
It
sometimes
does.
delightfully.
Yeah, but if you live next to like a wild or open area, you probably shouldn't grow it.
Mm,
In
yeah,
suburbia, probably not a problem, but it will recede. It
yes.
will happen, which is okay because usually the main plant kind of dies out.
Hmm.
But if you get to them before a season, like too much of a season goes by, you can pull them out pretty easily or replant them. But they're easy to spot because
Yeah.
they have this bronzy, feathery foliage to them. I think all parts of the plant are edible. Double check that
Yes.
before you eat anything. But
No,
certainly the
yes.
foliage, certainly the foliage is edible.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't use fennel in my cooking. Do you?
It tastes like black licorice. Yes,
I
I do.
know. Yes. And so
Yes.
you use that in making what? Black licorice?
No, 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 no. It's great with chicken and fish, things like that, with just like a little bit of that anise flavor to it. I know a lot of people use it also to make vinegars. You can make a vinegar that then can be like a base for any sauces and such that you make, with just a little bit of that black licorice flavor, which a lot of people like. Or
Yeah.
you can take a shot of sambuca instead. Either
Yeah.
or.
So when it sends up these flowers, like these tall flower stalks, you know, they're they have a definite presence. You can see them. But they're not so big. They'll be 4 or 5, and you can see them just kind of waving in the wind, and you can see through them.
Hmm.
But again, they're doing all the effects of a see-through plant. Adding that depth, that cottage gardeny feel to it. Insects. Flying all around and things like that. It's a wonderful natural vibe to the plant.
I love that we're recording on Zoom now, so I can see you do your interpretive dance of what pollinators look like.
Well, before we were on Zoom, we recorded in the same room, so you could see it then too.
I know, but you didn't feel as free to, kind of let your freak flag fly. You're definitely, that was quite the interpretive dance. I loved it.
Well, let's see how you would demonstrate pollinators flying.
I just did. I just did. Yeah, this is truly a great plant. And it's cool that the foliage, as you described it, super ferny, that's see-through. So, anything that's lower down, smaller perennials or such, you could see through to those. And then when the umbels shoot up, those flowers, like bottle rockets, they kind of are see-through as well. So you've got two levels of see-throughness, which not all see-through plants are like that. A lot of them have dense foliage down the bottom, and it's just the flowers that you can see through. So yeah, that was a good one. I approve. I approve.
Okay, I do want to say if you're scared off by the reseeding thing, you can deadhead.
Yes.
And it's the seeds. A lot of people harvest the seeds to add to sauces and things like that. So
Yep.
You can really control that. But if you're iffy on, if you live next to a wide open area, you might want to think twice about that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I love it. All right. Good choice. Good choice. So I'm going to tell you about a plant that you've never heard of, and it wasn't on your list, and I didn't steal it away from you, but it's tall verbena, which I know we've talked about probably at least once, maybe twice before, but that's a verbena bonariensis. And for those of you who aren't actually watching this on YouTube, Steve is making quite the face right now. But anyway, I sold this plant fair and square. I love it.
It was my number one plant. And when I did a little research to see who the usual suspects are, verbena bonariensis comes up on every see-through plant list. And there's a reason for that. Go ahead, Danielle.
All right. So its foliage is pretty non-existent. It kind of creates this almost basal clump of, kind of a long needle-like foliage to it. The foliage is pretty nondescript. It doesn't really look like anything. It gets a little bit taller, and then the stems fire off like bottle rockets, and they're really sturdy stems. They're almost square shaped. They shoot out like bottle rockets, and a few leaves kind of dot the stems. But then at the very, very top, you've got these lavender pom-pom looking drumstick flowers at the top. And they kind of cleave off. Every time you go to pick them, because they make a great cut flower too, you cut the stem back, it shoots out two more flower stems. So this is a plant that starts flowering for me around this time, midsummer, early summer for us here on the East Coast. And this thing will go all the way into fall, which is pretty awesome. It's only zone 7 to 11, so it's actually not hardy here. However, I have reliably had it reseed, as I know you have, year after year after year. It tends to come back in the places that I don't actually want it to come back, like the driveway and the cracks of my stone wall. And this past winter, because we had such a mild winter, I had a pretty hardy clump that was right on the side of my walkway. And I'm pretty sure that was root hardy last year. It came right back again. So I have a feeling that, because the weather is changing, that this might be, a reliable perennial for me now. But the first time I saw this plant planted in mass was at Dennis Schrader and Bill Smith's, their garden, which is out in Long Island. It's one of the coolest private gardens I've ever been to, but they own Landcraft Nursery, which specializes in exotic and crazy plants. But they had probably, I want to say it was at least a 30-foot long border where they had panicle hydrangeas, they had these beautiful sedums, and then at the feet, and then they had the tall verbena in between. And that just made such a stunning combination. I visited that garden in the spring, in the fall, in the summer, and that combination always looked dynamic. And again, it was because of those see-through tall verbena. You could see the cool sedum in the front, you could see the hydrangeas in the back, and it was just magical. I mean, it was like purple fireflies all over the place.
It's like when you put like sprinkles on top of a cake,
Yes.
Or like that, whatever that. Not the sprinkles, like the big sprinkles, but the sort of glittery confetti type stuff that you can eat that you put over a cake.
Yes,
Or you throw parsley over the top of a dish.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just adds those little dots of interest.
It does.
Make things look cool. Mine overwintered. Mine reseed exactly where I don't want them. They actually reseed everywhere. I think I planted one plant on one corner of my house, and I'm trying to get it to. I want it to be over on the other side of my house, and I've been slowly migrating it by cutting off the seed heads and chucking them over there. And I see it popping up where I want it to be. So my efforts have been rewarded, but it is also all in the gravel by my garbage cans. It's in the cracks of the walkway. It's in the walkway by the driveway. And those stems get kind of woody. So when you cut them back, you can't walk on them with bare feet. That's not cool. And so that's kind of a downside to it, but it's easily controlled. You can easily identify the foliage, easily pulled out, and easily controlled. But the effect of verbena bonariensis is it's one of those plants that looks good wherever you have it.
Yes.
Or wherever it decides it wants to grow, because that's what happens. Yeah. But I cut off the seed heads and throw them in the places in my garden where I want them to appear. And more often than not, I'm successful. But it has a mind of its own.
It's interesting too. I don't think that we talked about the overall height. I said it's in between a sedum and a panicle hydrangea, but it ranges in the 3 to 5 foot range. Yeah. For us, because I think it gets beat all the way back down, it's about 3 feet. Typically in my garden, might get a little bit taller, but I've seen it obviously out in Long Island, a warmer climate, definitely was topping out at 5 feet. Full sun, well-drained soil.
Yeah, beloved by butterflies. And bumblebees. Very interesting. It is invasive in Florida and maybe California.
I did see that. It was like 2 little spots.
Yeah.
And it's like Southern California.
Yeah, like warmer, longer season. But with a name like bonariensis, it must be from Central America, I believe. So the Southwest is probably its preferred habitat.
Yeah.
But again, a great plant that if you don't mind reseeding, is just it's going to it looks good everywhere.
It does.
Okay. Another plant that has a lot of names to it is Actaea racemosa, which used to be Simisafuga racemosa, which might actually be Actaea simplex. But I'm talking about the same plant.
Yes. Bugbane, snake root, right?
Bugbane, snake root, baneberry, black cohosh, black snake root. It has a ton of common names. But I would say Actaea racemosa. And the cultivar I like any of the dark-leaved cultivars. I go with brunette because that's the one that we have a photo of. But there's Hillside Black Beauty, which is great. There's Black Negligee. I think there's one called Chocoholic, which is great. I think that's growing down in the test garden. They're all wonderful. And so what you have is maybe 2 to 3 feet tall foliage, maybe 2 to 3 feet wide, and then in late summer. Not like Rudbeckia late summer, but midsummer maybe to fall is when it flowers, and it sends up these long stalks topped with white bottle brush flowers. They're not completely straight. They have a little wave to them. Sometimes they curl a little bit, and they're wonderful. They're adored by bumblebees again. The flowers are, I would say, of questionable aroma. Some people like them. Some people hate the aroma.
What? Why? It smells like vanilla or like root beer, something like that.
Some people hate the smell.
Those people are crazy.
Some people love the smell, but yeah.
It's not one of those pungent fragrances at all. It's not pungent. It's sweet.
I want people to be aware.
Okay.
Because people react differently to
smells.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I love that smell. Oh, I hate that smell. I can't stand, some people like the smell of gasoline. Some people hate the smell of gasoline. Like it's, people love the smell of like lemon cleaner, who knows?
All right. True.
So it has an aroma. And so that, they get tall and they wave, in the background. And again, it's see-through. But what's even better about this is the foliage on these dark leaf varieties, because it is purple, black, sometimes fades to a little bronze color. It's so dark and moody that
That's why
it's
you like it.
wonderful. I don't know what you're getting at. But it sort of looks like, it reminds me of a serrated maple leaf.
Oh yeah.
If you think about that, then you're not too far off.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what the technical term of leaves, the leaf shape is.
Yeah.
But if you think of a maple leaf, kind of stretch it out a little bit and give it serrated edges. It's great, but just wonderful, wonderful dark foliage that contrasts so much with the white flowers. It's such a great presence. And this is a partial shade plant. It's definitely not full sun. Partial shade, moist, well-drained soil. Did I say zones 3 to 8?
I don't think so yet. Yeah. So
okay, so it's zones 3 to 8, which is pretty good. Native to the eastern United States.
Mm-hmm.
Just a great plant, and this is another one that if you have a shady spot and you add this plant, you're going to be so thankful that you did, especially if you had like a nice clump of them, like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
The clump like towards the back of your shady spot. It's just going to look awesome. Come late July, early August. Yeah.
I always thought of this as a focal point plant until we featured a garden that was all on massing from Wisconsin, I believe, this past year. And they planted this, I think it was brunette, in a huge mass. And it was absolutely stunning. I never thought about, planting 5, 7 of these plants all together.
Right.
But when they just foliage, they looked great when I scouted this garden. And then when I went back to photograph officially for the article, all in bloom, it was, you noticed this thing from 500 yards out, and it was just a magnet. You had to get over there to them. It's a stunning, stunning plant that I always thought, oh, it's a singleton plant. Oh, no. I feel like you have to have at least 3 of these because they're so beautiful.
Yeah, I have one here, and I have one at the test garden, and you can tell like it wants more around it. And I've seen it like you have massed, and I said going around like sort of down the edge of the length of a bed. Mm-hmm. And it really just drew your eye like off into the distance. It was just wonderful. These things kind of sticking up and grabbing your attention. Yeah. It used to be called Semicifuga, and that's why I bought it way back in the day, because I thought it was cool to say Semicifuga. And so I went and bought this plant, and it's great. It's just the wonderful dark foliage, great flowers, which I like the smell of.
Yeah, I do too. And I think everything smells like cat pee. So, I feel like if there was ever anybody who was going to say it smells bad, it's me.
Yeah. Okay, you're not invited inside my house.
So I want to move on to a plant that, again, I think we might have touched on before in a different episode, but meadow rue, Thalictrum rashbrunianum. Meadow rue is just a dynamic, awesome plant. I would call it probably the most serendipitous plant in my garden, because I did plant, I think 3 of these initially 7 years ago when my garden was first getting established, and I planted them in a nice grouping. They have, it kind of looks like maidenhair fern as its foliage, just a little bit beefier, a little bit longer, but glaucous blue color, very delicate, almost as if it's made of crepe paper. That's what the foliage looks like. And the stems of these glaucous blue leaves are purple. So you get that nice contrast. And it kind of forms a decent sized fern-like clump down at the base. And then about mid-spring, it starts sending up this shoot out of nowhere. And it's a beefy stem that's bright purple, and it just starts shooting up out of the clump. And then right about midsummer or so, it starts bursting forth with all of these lavender star-like flowers with a little yellow center that are suspended on threads. So the effect is when you start clustering and massing these flowers on these big, tall stems is clouds of purple smoke. That's honestly what it looks like from a distance. And you can see through them. You can see whatever's behind them, whatever's in front of them. It's something that definitely I would say has bare legs. So you don't want this to be, the one plant right in the front of your garden. You definitely are going to need something around the bottom to kind of cover up those bare legs. But meadow rue is so, so incredible. However, from where I planted those 3 plants, there's nothing there anymore for meadow rue. I've got them now popping up probably a good 10, 15 feet in another direction, opposite 10, 15 feet in the other direction. And it is one of those brilliantly serendipitous plants that just seems to pop up in exactly the right spot. It's now situated itself at the bottom of my Sun King Aurelia. So I have that beautiful cloud of purple smoke in front of bright yellow chartreuse leaves, and it's making me incredibly happy. Zones 4 to 9 too. I know that, I gave you a zone 7 plant last time. Hey, zone 4, I'm throwing this one in your direction. Partial shade to full sun, moist, well-drained soil. However, I have it in lean, crappy, dry soil. Still doing great.
I think you need to plant it in front of something because it's so airy that you can almost miss the flowers. And the one I think that doesn't really have the problem is the double flowered one. The Hewitt's double, I think, is the name of it. And that one has a little more mass to it, so it's a little easier to see the actual blooms on it. I believe when you were at my house, I showed you my thalictrum forest. Where it has receded so much that there's just all these stalks everywhere of thalictrum, and it doesn't like to be moved because I've tried to move it.
No.
And what will happen is that it will immediately flop. It will immediately wilt, and you'll have to nurse it back to health, and then it should be okay. I've succeeded, moving it, but you do have to keep it watered for a good couple weeks, as it's getting adjusted to its new spot, because it will tell you it is not happy. I liked where I was, and you have moved me to a new place. This is not a place of my choosing. It has receded everywhere. It's receded, to my next door neighbor's house, and it's not a problem. Again, they're easily identifiable. They're easy to pull out. It's a great thing. It kind of lets you know where it wants to grow. Apparently, it's happy where I have it because it has receded all in that area. And I kind of have nothing but thalictrum there now. And I keep forgetting to move it during a good time, which is, when it's cool.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of rain in the forecast. Yeah, and there's a lot of rain in the forecast.
Yeah. How tall do yours get? So I think mine probably top out at nearly 6 feet tall. I mean, mine get pretty tall.
Well, they're over 6 feet because they're taller than me.
Okay.
And I bump up to 6 feet, and they're definitely taller than me, so that they absolutely get taller than that, but not wide at all.
Yeah.
And so
no,
the foliage,
2 feet. Maybe?
You said maidenhair fern. I would say columbine. They look pretty much the same.
It's not as dense. It's not as thick as that. It's probably in between a columbine and a maidenhair fern.
Right. But Hewitt's double is the cultivar I'd go with.
Yeah.
Do you go with the straight species? I
go with the straight species because the thing is I love those little purple star-like flowers. I think those are beautiful. The Hewitt's double or any of the other doubles, because there are a few more now on shorter varieties, I believe. They look like cotton balls, like little Sputnik cotton balls to me. I don't really like that look as much. I like it when it's, a little more airy. It's not as dense a flower show. It's a little bit more ethereal, if you will.
So anybody looking to get Danielle a present should not buy her
Hewitt's
Sputnik cotton ball. Danielle, when you talk about see-through plants, we could talk about grasses the entire episode.
Oh my gosh, I just flipped my page to my next plant and it's a grass. So yay, you're on my wavelength. All right, what do you have?
You know what I have since I sent you my list.
I'm getting older. I kind of forget. I know you had a grass, but I can't remember which one it was. I
have to me probably the ultimate see-through grass that we can grow in our area. And I've talked about it before because as I was typing up my notes, I was reminded, like, wait a minute, I've talked about this one before. But it's sky racer purple moorgrass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so Molinia caerulea, subspecies Arundinacea, sky racer,
Mm-hmm.
zones 5 to 8. Likes areas with cooler temperatures, cooler summers, likes a moisture spot. Whereas, a lot of our grasses, our prairie grasses, like, full sun and dry. This one likes a little moisture. It's from Europe. Not exactly sure where. It can ultimately get to be about 6 to 8 feet tall in flower, about 2 to 3 feet wide. The foliage is only around 2 feet tall, and it's this arching mound of strappy ribbons of foliage, anywhere from green to chartreuse. And you notice this down in the test garden. We have one over in one area that's green, and we have another one that's chartreuse. And maybe they're different plants, maybe they're the same plants, but they were both labeled as sky racer, and they both do the same thing. But one is a little more chartreuse than the other. But the reason why you buy this is because right about now, mine isn't doing this now, so I'm going to say maybe late July, is it sends up these skyrockets of these narrow inflorescences up to like 6 to 7 feet tall. And they're very thin and wispy, and they just kind of wave in the breeze, and they form like this little fan, this super tall fan that calls you from wherever you are in the garden to make you want to come over and look at it. Just absolutely stunning. It's very hard to photograph, but
Very hard.
but it's also very hard to miss when you're there in
Mm-hmm.
person. You just notice this plant wherever you are. Full sun to partial shade.
Really? Partial shade?
That's where I have it, and that's where we have it in the test garden. Is partial shade. There's a little purple tinge to the inflorescences if you look at them really close, or if you have enough of them. I don't really. It's hard to notice unless you stare at it. Like I said, moisture is better. It gets a wonderful golden fall color. And there's probably even better. I didn't uncover. It's there. It's common. Is a cultivar named Transparent, which is going to be even more see through. To me, Sky Racer is a little bigger and has a little bit more of a presence. But if you want something that's not that big but still has that airy see throughness, actually, all of the Molinias will do this. But Transparent is another cultivar. And this is just, it's one of those plants that just takes your breath away when you see it. And I had 2 of them and they looked great. And then the voles came this winter and ate one of them. So still sad about that.
Have you ever grown the variegated version?
It's a smaller one. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have that test garden. I planted maybe like 5 of them. And I think we're down to like 2 or 3. So like if it's not really happy where it is, and like I said, it likes a moisture spot, and this is in a place that's not on drip irrigation. So we've lost a bunch of them, but they're much smaller, like maybe like 2 feet tall total. They're like little tufts of grass. They're more like a blue fescue, Festuca glauca type height, But yeah, we have those too.
The foliage just looks really cool. I guess I haven't noticed it in the test garden, but the foliage of that variegated variety looks very, very neat because it's almost yellow and green and cream color. It's almost got a tricolor variegation to it. It's very striking. And then when it shoots up its bottle rockets, those stems are bright yellow, which is kind of cool.
By the way, I'm making notes every time. I'm making a little hash mark every time you say bottle rockets.
I mean, I'm either going to say like on steroids, or I'm going to say bottle rockets. I mean, and then what was Nooks and Crannies plants? We kept saying teeny, tiny, adorable.
But we kept saying nooks and crannies because these nooks and crannies plants are great for nooks and crannies, but because that's what they are. Yeah, but bottle rockets, you're up to 5.
All right, okay, there we go. The Sky Racer Molinia. The Sky Racer Molinia that you were talking about, the shape of it to me looks. In Connecticut, we don't have legal fireworks. We only have the fountains, if you will. It looks like a fountain firework. It's got the base, and then it's got all of these radiating shoots off of it with, sprinklers or sparklers at the ends of them.
It's funny you say that because whenever when I think of the shape, I think of the logo of Bradley Airport, which no one is going to get or understand. But when
Our
you said
Connecticut
sprinkler,
listeners will.
when you said sprinkler, it reminded me of the sprinklers that are like long and narrow, and they send up like that. No, 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 not that kind, but the ones that go,
Oh,
like they
oh,
go, they
yes.
send up like
A
those
fan.
fingers of for the people who are listening. You stretch out your palm and then lift it up, and it's got that vibe to it. Like that's what it looks like, but it's stuck on when it's way up at the top, and that's where it's stuck.
Yes.
And so you
Yes,
think
yes,
it's
yes.
safe. It's safe to run underneath and adjust where it is, and then that's when it decides to go down and get you wet.
Getcha.
Right.
I went for a grass that I was just researching for an article. I honestly didn't know it existed, and now I'm obsessed with it, and I need to get one. And it's Stipa ichu or ichu, Peruvian feathergrass. And the way that it was explained in this manuscript I'm working on is think of Mexican feathergrass, which I feel so many of us love, adore, think is really, really cool. They changed it to Nacella. So that's Nacella now instead of Stipa, which at a certain point in time, somebody did genetic testing. But this Peruvian feathergrass was described to me as that Mexican feathergrass, only beefed up. Really
She didn't
feed it.
say on steroids. She did
I
not say on
didn't.
steroids,
I
listener. She did
didn't.
not.
It ate its Wheaties. So it's got this insane needle-like blade to it. A cluster
Ouch.
of hair.
That sounds painful.
But the blades are not a typical ornamental grass blade. It's blades of hair. I don't know how else to explain it.
That sounds gross.
Green hair. And then midsummer, this thing gets plumes of white, looking like smoke, looking as if it went to the hairdresser and the hairdresser dyed the tips a little too blonde, went a little too 80s, and it's got this crazy frosted tip now. But you think about Mexican feathergrass, and what is that guy? That guy's maybe a foot tall by a foot wide, tends to reseed a little bit. This Peruvian feathergrass is 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. So this is a beefier version of that Mexican feathergrass. So you can see through the actual plant, the clump of grass. When it sends up those fried out ends, you can see through those plumes of smoke that it has at the tips. And it's really stunning, especially when it pops up in between plants and you can see through, and you get that movement as well because it's so finely textured. I know. The unfortunate part for me is it's zones 8 to 10, but I've grown Mexican feathergrass before as a container plant. That's not typically hardy for us here in zone 6. So I would be willing to grow this as a container plant, especially since it would, oh, Steve, you're getting a phone call. It's somebody who agrees with me.
That's not my phone.
It's somebody who agrees with me.
No, I think you're hearing things.
Oh, okay. But anyway.
That's not my phone.
Well, all right. It's not mine. Definitely not mine. Uh-oh. It's okay.
Who said that?
Who said that from nowhere?
I just heard this voice.
Producer Carrie weighed in, but it's drought tolerant. It's drought tolerant. Go ahead. Ahead.
Have you ever tried to overwinter a grass?
Have I ever tried to?
Overwinter a non-hardy grass?
No. Yes, fiber optic grass.
How'd that go?
Yeah. 50-50.
That's it. The thing about Mexican feathergrass is that it's borderline hardy here, mm-hmm. And I have So like in a good winter, it will stay over. There were some outside of my son's daycare back when he was a kid. Came back reliably every year. Mm-hmm. It was in a warm microclimate, and it came back every year. It looked great. I can usually get 2 years out of it, sometimes 3 years. I have some mm-hmm. growing in my garden now that I planted 3 years ago. There's basically nothing left of it last year, and this year there's a little bit, So it's borderline hardy, but zone 8, I think.
If you bring it in,
it's and then bring it out again. It's going to limp along. And it's going to be a shadow of its former self. But what you should do is to try it.
I
And
think so.
yeah, because I could be wrong. As with all
Most of
things, I could be wrong.
Well, I've shied away from container plants at this point because most of where I have my container plants, where I would want to put them, is in a full sun situation, and they are definitely not within an option of having drip irrigation. So anything that I choose has to be hot, dry, not take a lot of water, not take a lot of care. And I was thinking, oh, how cool would this grass be with some agaves or succulents or something along those lines in some container plantings. But if you are in zones, I mean, I actually saw that it's zone 7B, so it might be worth being a zone buster for some people. But Peruvian feathergrass, if you're within its zonal range, I would plant tons of it. It is the ultimate see-through plant.
So in between your grass and my grass is Stipa gigantea, which is what I thought you were going to pick. Mm-hmm. And so that is a stipa like yours, but it's big and airy like mine. Mm-hmm. And I would grow Stipa gigantea, but I think it's a zone 7 plant. I see it out in Seattle all the time. And it still has those big airy panicles. I think the foliage, it's just a little bit more. It's not as airy as Sky Racer. And the foliage, I think, is taller. Mm-hmm. And has more of a presence. So altogether, that plant has more of a presence than Sky Racer does.
Yeah, I'm scared. If you're in
zone 7, I would go with Stipa gigantea.
I'm scared of that plant because I have heard that it has a tendency to beef out real quick and requires dividing fairly regularly because, well, it's giant. So I'm a little scared of that plant, but maybe in a good way.
Well, maybe it's the type of plant that's best admired in somebody else's garden.
I love it.
Right. So we've talked a lot about larger see-through plants, and I'll bring up a smaller see-through plants because the smaller plants can have the same effect, of letting you see what's behind them. Like, not everything has to be 6 feet tall to be see-through. So the smaller plants can have the same effect of adding depth to different parts of the border. And one of my favorite small see-through plants is Nadia macedonica, zones 5 to 9. Common name, Nadia. Some people call it red scabious, which sounds to me either like it sounds like an enemy Viking or a nasty infection you don't want to explain how you got. So I'm just going to go with Nadia as the common name. If you live, scabiosa is also known as scabious, and this looks a lot like that plant. What you're going to get is a fuzzy toothed foliage that's sort of it has like a grayish cast to it because it's fuzzy, but it's basically like a pale green, and it sends up these waving wiry stems that are topped with the little pin cushions that are just a deep, wonderful maroon. And full sun to partial shade. Not too fussy about soil because where I've had it growing has just been in the terrible soil. And apparently doesn't like the heat and humidity of the deep south. And technically it's a perennial, but it is short-lived, but reseeds around. And so I have had it in the same general area for going on 7-8 years. And like with all wonderful reseeders, it goes into different places where it wants to be and kind of always looks cool there. I love the way the flower stems kind of wander up and around and through, and they create this kind of knitted, lush effect, like it makes it look like I have something going on, a cottage garden vibe to it. And just a wonderful, easy plant to grow, easy to rip out because you'll recognize the foliage if it goes somewhere where you don't want. But like I said, it's only going to get to be about 2 feet tall, and the clump is maybe 10 inches, maybe a foot wide. Super easy to grow. There are cultivars out there. There's a smaller version called Mars Midget. There's a variegated one, Thunder and Lightning.
Thunder and Lightning.
There's the one we used to sell at the plant sale called Melton Pastels, which had different color flowers to it. So they were red and white.
Off of one plant, you get purple, pink, and white.
Yeah.
off of one plant, which is really beautiful. Yeah, Melton Pastels is one that I've used in landscape designs too. I really like that plant. But
That,
like you
that
said, short lived.
yeah, but it's a little taller too,
Yes,
isn't it? Like
it
that one was
is.
taller. Yeah.
That one was maybe 2 feet when it's in flower, a little bit taller than that even. Um, but yeah, I'm often curious about Nadia. Do you think it suffers from the same ailment as Gora does, where it just blooms so much, it blooms its little heart out? Is that the problem?
Maybe, maybe.
Okay.
Perennials that bloom and bloom and bloom tend to use up all their energy and kind of, don't live
Yeah,
very long. But because it recedes,
true. Hmm.
like like I said, I've had it for 5, 6, 7 years, if not longer,
Hmm.
and I planted it once, but it is not the same plant because it has popped up all over the place. And I think
Oh, really?
for whatever reason, I kind of replanted in a certain area, so I lost most of it. So this year I'm down to just one.
Hmm.
But I'm going to take those the old flower heads, the seed heads, and sprinkle those around because I know it'll be popping up in all sorts of other places, and it looks great. Like that deep maroon, just for some reason looks good with everything, and it always pops.
Similar look and color to the chocolate cosmos, has that same brownish dark maroon effect and kind of the same size too, quarter size blooms to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I
The
wouldn't go brown. I would go maroon, but
mm,
hmm.
and the eye, yeah. The foliage is cool though on this plant. It's not to be overlooked because it is artichoke like. If you
Yeah,
shrunk down an artichoke plant, it has that similar leaf shape, only far smaller. It has that similar gray, silvery, green, fuzzy texture to it.
yeah,
It's a baby artichoke plant. It's cool.
yeah. Now that you
Very
mention
cool.
it, I will not be able to unsee that.
You're welcome. I'm going to throw in a native plant just because I'm feeling sassy. And I like
Yeah,
throwing in.
that's not normally your thing.
It's not normally my thing. Oh, stop it. I grow plenty of native plants, but I
I
just
know,
don't
but
tend to
yeah,
mention a lot of them.
yeah,
Um, but this is a plant that I've always loved Vernonia, ironweed, it's known as. And there's many different kinds of ironweed out there, tall, short, skinny, fine texture, beefier, all have purple flowers. But I want to stick with our native, which is the New York ironweed, which is Vernonia novaborensis. Novaborensis.
yeah.
Um,
You got it.
Hooray! It's a new day. I can pronounce the species name and I named a native plant. Well, wonders never cease. It's a pandemic miracle. So, New York ironweed is one of these plants where you probably have seen it if you live on the East Coast, just driving around. Because late summer, when not much else is going on, you look in an area on the side of the highway that might get a little runoff because it likes to have wet feet. All of a sudden, you notice these clusters of bright, dark purple. I guess they'd be considered umbellish shaped, um, teeny tiny little button flowers that are on these dark, 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 almost black stems. And you think, whoa, where did that come from? Well, the plant looks like a weed the rest of the time. The foliage is spear like, very, very long spears that kind of form a cluster down at the bottom. It starts getting a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. Reminds me a lot.
I'm imagining the throne on Game of Thrones. Yeah, a
Yes,
cluster of
yes.
sharp objects.
Yeah, it kind of looks like the throne on Game of Thrones. It has a similar lifespan as Solidago. Looks like a weed for most of the year, or a nondescript pile of greenery, and then late summer, especially because of its late summer, there's nothing really going on except for daisies maybe, that it shoots up these crazy, crazy, huge stems of purple. Absolutely beautiful. I'm looking to see, okay, because I wanted to double check my heights on this. So 4 to 6 feet tall. I'm pretty sure most of the ones that I see are upwards of 6.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's happy, it probably gets a little bit bigger than that. But full sun, wet to moist soil. So this is something that I could definitely reintroduce to my wetland area. I have noticed it natively growing tons of places and keep saying, I have to put that in my garden. I have to put that in my garden. I just love it. I think it's really cool. It's obviously tough as nails. It's zones 5 to 9, it says, but I've even seen it used in massing in a Milwaukee garden that I visited. So obviously it can take a little bit more, but definitely if you're looking for see-through plants, if you're looking for native plants, check out the genus Vernonia ironweed, because it has a lot of other species that are native to different areas of the country.
So we have iron butterfly down in the test garden,
Yes,
which is
that
a
is
cultivar of this plant.
cultivar. Mm-hmm.
And I recall seeing it in a nursery and thinking it was either Amsonia hubrichtii or Amsonia Georgia pancake. Like it had
Yes.
that wonderful fluffy foliage to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was really impressed with the foliage.
Well, so that is I think that is that Lettermai. Lettermai is the species on that one.
Lettermanii, okay, different species.
Yeah,
Okay.
so different species, and it has much finer texture. This the New York ironweed has more of a solidago presence to it. It's got that, denser, thicker spikes to it.
So why did you choose that one instead of Lettermanii or one of the other ones?
Because it gets big, it gets bold, it makes a presence. I also find that it's a great native. It transplants easily. It really just needs that full sun. And I also love the time of year that it blooms is, I feel, a time of year when a lot of people want something different, a little bit different than the late, rudbeckia type daisy flowers. Yours, iron butterfly, tends to bloom a little bit earlier. So I went with the native. I went with our native, and it's a winner in my book.
I just think the name ironweed says a lot about this plant.
Yes.
And like the people, who were in charge of coming up with the common names, like the colonists or whatever, like back in the day, it's like, well, it has it's really tough, so we should work in the name iron. It's very, very tough, and like it kind of grows everywhere, so let's work in the name weed. So it's very adaptable. It's adaptable and tough is what you get from ironweed.
Precisely.
Of course, I was thinking of a psychedelic heavy metal band. Ironweed.
Of course. I mean, this has gone really left here. We talked about Game of Thrones and psychedelic, metal, all in the same description of one plant.
And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter to talk about seeing the garden.
The best garden experiences are those that involve all 5 senses. But even in those circumstances, it is sight that makes the most impact. Perhaps then, the more there is to see, the greater the impact. I can hear you saying, but Peter, all I have is my little plot of land, not some grand estate. But I would point out that acreage does not equal impact. Ironically, dividing a space can make it feel larger. Instead of one area to explore, there are now 2. A bend in the path that reveals something unseen is a delight, and to create it takes imagination, not square footage. See-through plants play an important role in giving us more to see in the garden. First you see the plant, then you see that there is something beyond it. This sense of more is what makes a garden feel bigger than it is. It, quite simply, gives you more to see. Of course, one can always have too much of a thing, and too much to see is chaotic and disorienting, like watching 10 television channels at once, or listening to Steve explain what he thinks colours are. We want our gardens to have impact, but not that much impact.
I love that Peter talked about, mystery, because I always think of him as being an international man of mystery.
And he is, but you're not allowed to say that.
We got to keep it to ourselves. We don't have to keep who this week's expert is to ourselves, though. Let's see who it is.
Hi, my name is Leslie Harris, and I run a gardening business in Charlottesville, Virginia. We do residential gardening, concentrating on containers, annuals, perennials, and hand pruning. In other words, we do all the fun stuff, and we leave the mow and blow and other noisy contraptions to the landscapers. Being a former teacher, I also love to talk about horticulture, and I offer something called Garden Tip Tuesday on Instagram under the handle of Leslie Harris LH if you want to take a look. I'm going to talk a little bit more about see-through plants. It's worth noting that when Danielle reached out to me to ask me to speak on this topic, she used that exact phrase with no other explanation. And I didn't realize that was tricky until my husband told me he had never heard me mention that before. And the poor guy hears me talk about horticulture enough so that a flimsier marriage might collapse under the strain. So although it's not a technical term, I think it's interesting that anyone familiar with flower borders knows exactly what it is without even thinking about it. Most conventional garden borders are arranged in what we might call stadium seating, tallest in the back. It makes sense unless you have some perennials in a witness protection program that really don't want to be seen. Unlike my clients' gardens, which are neat as a pin, which is why these people hire us, my own garden is much more laissez-faire, and most of my see-through plants are volunteers, such as cleomes, larkspur, zinnias, and of course, the quintessential see-through, the verbena bonariensis. I love the occasional unplanned height popping up, and the surprise lends interest and change to an otherwise predictable rhythm. Planning to plant tall perennials in front of shorter ones requires more dedication and chutzpah. These plants didn't just appear. You've made a commitment to rocking the world of stadium seating. So let's talk about a few that are worth this bold behavior. I love to put tall lilies not in the back of the border. The reason, of course, is the scent. You don't want that to have to waft from too far away. But they do have a tendency to lean, so maybe we don't give them front row seating either. The foliage is attractive all summer long, and I like the idea of it starting out in spring where I can see it. That way I'm able to terrorize any bunny that thinks it's a snack. My theory on rabbit control is if I yell at them and chase them like a crazy lady, they will quickly realize that there must be better real estate options in the neighborhood, and perhaps my house should have been listed as an asylum anyway. I grow a lot of Orient pet type lilies. They're a cross between Oriental and trumpet lilies, and their stems are so strong that although they can be over 6 feet tall, I've never had to stake them. They're leaners for sure, but let them lean on the front of the border so you can smell them and see right through them, as if something else growing behind them is amazing enough to distract you from their scent. These bulbs are easily grown in zones 4 through 8. Some people call them OT lilies, again, because they're a cross between Oriental and trumpet. They bloom for about 2 weeks before the Oriental lilies do. Some tall cultivars that smell amazing are Anastasia, which is a 2-tone pink with gorgeous curved petals. It can get 8 feet tall. Purple Lady is another tall one with pinky purple foliage and yellow centers. They're hardy from zones 8 all the way down to 3. And after they flower, you would want to cut the tops off so that they don't form seeds, just as you would with any bulb. So you leave the foliage to feed the bulb for next year's bloom. If you were to stare at the remaining foliage, it could seem slightly incongruous, for sure, like a shiny dark ladder with nothing at the top. But I find it sort of just disappears into the background. I have tall, later blooming daylilies and black and blue Salvia guarnitica blooming right behind them, so when their show is over, I find I don't really notice the foliage. Tall daylilies, the spider type particularly with the long, narrow petals, make for good see-through plants. The non-see-through foliage stays low, and the pretty blooms bob in the wind almost at head height. Makes them easier to pick to throw into your salad. Did you know that they are edible? Or to deadhead anyway. I have a few tall ones that I like, such as Hyperion, which has such yellow foliage, so bright it seems to glow at the end of the day. There's a very late season yellow one with orange tones that's supposed to get 6.5 feet tall that I saw on the Oaks Daylily website. It's aptly named Autumn Minaret. Another one that caught my eye on that site was called Moonladder, lilac petals on the outside of a yellow throat. I just love daylilies. Daylilies are so easy to grow in dry, wet, sun, or part shade, and of course hardy in lots of zones 4 through 9. Tall irises such as the Japanese iris insata and the iris pseudochorus are fun plants to have close by. Their foliage makes them a little harder to see through, and yet the blooms are taller than the foliage. So once their show is over and they're deadheaded, one can easily peer over them to see something coming into its own behind them. Both of these plants love wet feet, and both have blooms that are interesting to peer at close up. Iris pseudochorus is also called the yellow flag iris. It's considered invasive in some areas of the country, so take care growing it. I always thought it was a decent plant to have around until I planted it at the edge of my stream. Constantly wet soil changes it into something you may see in a Jurassic Park film. Picture a calm, lovely scene before the dinosaurs start having their way, with thick, lush foliage that is attractive long after the blooms are gone. It grows in zones 5 through 9. The Japanese iris insata is shorter, coming in at about 3 to 4 feet, with blooms a bit taller than that. You will see its flowers just after the bearded irises are finished, and the blooms are flatter and more delicate and more interesting to my eye. I grow the variegata for the foliar interest after the flowers are finished. This plant grows in zones 4 through 9. Moving away from tall flowers, I love the combination of Gauralin hammeri and the sedum autumn joy, or Hylotelephium, as no real person ever called it, ever. The turgid stalks of the sedum help hold up the gaura, but of course it still splays open a bit. It's such a delicate flower that you can see right through it when it's the sedum's turn to shine. The last plant I want to point out is the astilbe. It has good, thick bunch of foliage way down low, but those flower stalks rise up like fireworks, and they let you still see the night sky behind them. And of course, the foliage itself becomes quite sparse if you don't give it all the water at once all summer long, darn it. But that's not a happy gardening tale, so let us move on to my latest favorite, astilbe chocolate shogun. Hardy in zones 4 through 8, it has a thick, cushy pillow of 2 foot by 2 foot dramatic deep purple foliage. Maybe that's the chocolate part? Topped by swords. Is that the shogun part? Are these samurai swords? Of pink, the kind of pink you would see in a baby girl's nursery, rising above delicately. I love this plant. It wants wet soil, mine are blooming in not much sun at all. And although I only have eyes for it, yes, I can see the glaucus hostas I have planted behind it, and the combo makes my heart sing. One of the best parts of gardening is wandering around with a cold beer, just after you've put your tools away and just before you shower. And see-through plants let you see even more of your little charges, so I do recommend mixing it up with height near the front of the border to happily peer through.
So Steve, I was thinking about what are other things other than plants that are good if they're see-through?
How about saran wrap and cling wrap?
Oh, your wife would like that. Yes.
I just thought of that.
Because when you raid the refrigerator at midnight, you have no excuse now for taking absolutely everything out of the fridge.
Well, it does a better job than tinfoil, too.